Hello, everybody. I'm here with Claire Nutt, who's just finished a peer learning seminar with us here at the IMI for our members. Claire, hello, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted to do this insights piece.
You talked around technology and HR and people and transformation and really engaging, really insightful, in fact, in terms of just people in the room, obviously coming from different cultures, different organizational cultures, and therefore what it means to them and what they might take back to their organization. But I just wanted to carry on that conversation because I think our listeners would enjoy that. So maybe let's focus on leadership. So biggest leadership mistake that you see when people are trying to implement technology into an organization?
I would say that is communication.
Right.
And technological transformation doesn't fail because of the technology, it fails because of the people. So the transformation strategy is not communicated clearly, leadership are not embracing and embedding that strategy, and they're not continuing to keep their people updated. And the success is only going to be as successful as the leader.
Yes.
And those people need to be brought along with the transformation, not the transformation pushed upon them. We know nobody likes change. We know that. The role that leadership need to play is to remove the pain from that transformation as much as possible, so that can move into a new space and a new working era with the technology.
Just on that, the leaders might not be technical.
No, absolutely not.
So are they at a disadvantage by not being technical and having to communicate a technology transformation?
I wouldn't say so, because their employees aren't going to be technical either. They need to be able to translate that from what is the transformation we're moving through. Are we introducing a new piece of technology? Are we introducing AI agents across a business process? You don't need to be a data scientist to understand how that works. They need to be able to translate what it's doing into the level of the user so that the employees understand what that transformation is, because it's all about how's it going to impact me? That's what employees are probably thinking.
What's in it for me?
What am I? Yeah. Why do I need to know this? And what's it doing for me? Is it going to impact my role? So I think a manager being able to change the level of communication for their audience is a critical skill that they must have for that successful digital transformation in whatever space of technology they're introducing.
And in your experience, is there a framework that leaders can be using to help with that communication and think about the strategic priorities that need to take place?
Yeah, it really depends on how deep the level of change is going to be.
Right.
So, for example, I've just presented a framework for our leaders today where we're looking at disruption capability.
Yes.
So we're looking at opportunities, seizing that transformation, understanding and sensing what is the capability, and then moving that through to transformation. There's no one right framework that's going to answer all of it, or the one that suits all business. I think it's all contextual. I find that disruption capabilities is great though for technological transformation, because it simplifies it for those that are maybe not at a strategic level, because you're going to have project teams that have lots of different levels, working on that type of transformation. It's something very clear and very simple that individuals can understand. What is the change? What is happening? How are we seizing that? Sense what we can actually do with the capabilities we have or maybe don't have. And then how do we move that into a transformation plan as well? It simplifies it and removes, sometimes there's too much leadership going on for people to comprehend, and they need to get it back to basics to understand how it's going to work and what it's going to look like.
Yeah, it was actually interesting in the peer learning seminar when we went through that process, and there's lots of different people from different organizations there. But when we went through that process, the framework was really simple, but it asked the right questions.
Yeah.
And everybody was taking a topic for a particular challenge that an organization might have. We went through that, but it was clear that it didn't matter where talking to capabilities and different parts of the organization getting together. One, we're all from different organizations. Two, we're from different functions within those organizations. But actually, the framework worked really well, just for setting the scene.
And those questions were actually strategic in that way, so that I knew I was aware there were CEOs in that room. There were people that were assistant principals. There were heads of HR. It doesn't matter what level you're at. When you're starting to look at strategy and transformation, you need to map and plan that. So you need to have an understanding of where we are now, what is changing, where's our opportunity, draw in on your capability, absence or not, and then formulate that into a plan. That for me simplifies it for those that maybe aren't used to working at a board level, strategic level.
Yes.
They can still have the strategic plan in their mind. Yeah.
Yeah. And you talk about the capabilities. What are you seeing in terms of skill set that's not showing up?
I think there's a lot of experts showing up now. So
Right.
that what I call is the OG, that ChatGPT exploded onto our marketplace, 4 years ago, nearly 5 years ago now, and everybody became an expert in everything because they could just ask ChatGPT
Exactly.
for the answer.
Yeah.
And then they very swiftly realizes ChatGPT is here to please you, as is any model, and it might not give you the right answer. So I've seen a little bit of regression. In relation to capability and skills, what we're seeing globally is, yes, there's worldwide adoption of these emerging technologies and the AI. You know, we've got 84%, I think, was reported, organizations using that authenticated AI access, but the skills gap is very much there. We're expecting 39% change in skills gaps in the next 4 years, and AI and big data are top of that list. That is the expectation, both from an employee perspective and an employer, because the employee is coming in as an AI native, used to using those technologies on a personal level, even into university level or study level,
Sure.
and moving through to employment and expecting the employer to be at that level too.
Yep.
And the gap is there. There is a misalignment at the minute. Organizations are trying to catch up to their strategy. The people are still coming through, you know, the routes and methods of study and into the world of employment. And I don't think we're there just yet. So I think there needs to be a big push for organizations to develop those digital skills. You know, only a few years ago, we were talking about just simple digital skills gaps. Now we're into layering AI and emerging technologies into that. So we're really tripping over ourselves to catch up on this. And I think employers need to invest in themselves. If you don't understand AI and how that affects your business, you come to one of the IMI courses, you know, have a chat with a member of staff and understand what programs run, just even to get to grips with how that is going to work for you and a level of understanding. And then do you need to move into literacy and understanding those programs across the business?
Yeah.
That's investment in people. And even though we invest in the training, that's generally the first thing, that doesn't necessarily give us capability, and the capability doesn't give us the transformation. So there's a lot of moving parts with all of us, but I would say make a start and at least explore the opportunities to gain the capability and understanding to push forward then with any of that change.
And that's really incumbent on leaders especially, because
Absolutely.
you need to be able to recognize where the skill gaps are in your organization, right? And try and do that early. Is there ways and means of establishing that?
Where the gaps are coming
Yeah.
from. If you're thinking about introducing a particular technology, you need to understand what capabilities are needed to maintain that. And you'll probably run that through phases. So initial phase will maybe just be at an individual level. If we take something like Copilot, say, for example, you might give a license for Copilot and say, yep, go and play with that in your role. Tell me if it creates efficiencies. Here's a list of prompts. That's only individual level felt value.
Yes.
For an organization to progress then into the next tier, which is looking really at decision augmentation and then organizational felt value, you need to build on that capability. So they need to know what's next. And it's so funny because the conversations we're having in that room is everybody was in the individual phase, looked at pilots.
It's really interesting.
And they'd all said, we're kind of struggling with what's next, because they need to then get feedback. They need to look and see, okay, we've built the skills, we've built some capacity and capability. If we were to move to the next phase of this and extend the software or technology that we're going to use, what skills are we going to need? What capacity do we need to build? Do we need to send people on specific training? Do we need to bring in external experts? Do we need to have wider conversation with other peers and find out what they're doing right?
Sure.
So I think there's no right or wrong answer with it. Yes, initially start with that training and make sure you're developing your people so they understand what they're introducing or what they're using. But in order to grow that beyond individual value, you will need to invest a lot more around the conversation and planning those pilots.
And the people part, yeah, because I mean, it's one of those things that you hear a lot in the sort of conversations around AI, especially, is, you know, people have gone out, organizations have gone out, they have bought the licenses,
Yeah.
and you know, the finance department are going, hey, we've just spent all this money,
Yeah.
what are we getting for it? And it's the part that they've missed is you haven't invested in the people or the capabilities of the people to use the technology in the right way, to start to think about the workflows and how you can automate
The processes.
and the processes. And then what we see turning up in the IMI a lot is that critical decision making, that's missing.
Yeah. That's the human skill that the AI and emerging technologies shouldn't replace.
Sure.
You know, we need that critical judgment. We need people still to be able to make critical decisions in the business. And I suppose my profession's HR, my background's HR, it's ingrained in them to have that critical thinking hat on at all times. We never take a decision at face value. We'll always question it, flip it upside down, think of another application and scenario. But not everybody's HR or been trained in that way. So we have to make sure that
you're thinking of human implications, right?
Human implications, automatically, the ethical, the governance, you know, what security parameters, what data are we sharing, all the questions that people that are excited about using AI aren't thinking about.
Sure.
And that's what we need to invest in our leaders. We need to make sure that they're operating like that. You know, be curious, yes, test, experiment, but you need to ask the right questions, you know, when you're moving through something like that as well. So investing in your people and the capability, I suppose, is forming only part of the transition, but it's really critical.
Very good. You talked around augmented roles.
Yeah.
So, you know, and he goes on to say, well, you know, what does a human AI collaboration look like? Yeah.
I think it very much depends on, are you replacing the entire role? I would argue AI is not going to replace people. People are humans, but I do see opportunity for AI to replace roles. And it's about how organizations then redistribute those existing people across the business. The human AI collaboration, I think, is a sweet spot. You get the benefit. We've ran businesses using humans for years, for decades. Yep. We're not going to get rid of them. But we need to take the best of those people and the best of their skills and blend that with the technology that we're developing or starting to utilize. Roles that I'm hearing that are coming, CHROs and CITOs, we're seeing a blend of that. So we're seeing the chief HR officers now being asked about the IT decisions across the business because there's a merge in some of those functions.
Interesting.
The lines are becoming very blurred about how we use technology, the decisions the technology is making. And also, some people might not be able to answer, what's your technology doing? What's it analysing and what decision is it making? Businesses need to know that before they move forward. So those governance teams are really critical. So one of the first roles I would see is those governance-led areas where they're giving guardrails for how it's going to be used in a business. They're giving their insight, and they generally exist of senior leadership, senior HR, senior IT representatives, and then the business unit owner who maybe wants to develop something in that area. That ethical governance risk, I suppose, bubble should be around everything that they're bringing in.
Yeah.
On the flip side of that, we've also heard about potentially roles coming in as an AI collaborating product owner. So where those people were maybe doing very routine rules-based roles, and a fair degree of that's being replaced by an agent or some sort of automated process, that person becomes responsible for the process. So it's not automatically handed over to IT or whatever, infrastructure they've got. They're actually, it's still part of their role. They take responsibility for looking after it, for developing it, because it's still going to have a life cycle and you'll still need to continually add feedback and improve on it as well. So nothing is static in all of that process. We still need people to look after those systems and technologies and processes. And I think it's really important and critical that we start to prepare for that and start to develop our people so that transition is smoother.
Smoother, yeah.
Definitely.
And so that kind of leads me to my last question, which is around in leadership and all of this. If a leader has 30 days to think about their change transformation with tech, where's the first place they should start?
Well, I would say if you haven't got paid licenses in your business for the likes of, Copilot, ChatGPT, Enterprise, whatever that might be, you need to start at individual level. So you're never going to grow to organizational level value if you haven't started looking at some form of AI in your business. Today was fantastic. I mean, I got great feedback. The organizations that were there, they felt the impact of the discussions that were happening in the room. Attend one of the peer seminars, because that conversation opens your mind and imagination to what actually might happen. The worst thing that you can do, and I'll tell you what not to do, is sit back and do nothing.
Because it's going to change anyway.
It will change anyway, and you'll not be part of it. Yes, absolutely.
But that's just that leadership. I mean, one of the things we do well here, I think, is giving people time to reflect.
Yes.
And, what came out of the peer learning seminar this morning to me was lots of leaders knowing we're progressing, we're going in a direction, we know, but there's gaps along the way, and then having the time to go, okay,
what's the next decision?
Exactly that. Exactly that. How do I can hear it all taking place, and again, different organizations talking to that. So,
but the funny thing is, I think they were all experiencing the same thing. So regardless of what stage they were on their path, though they felt the value and they can see the efficiency and they're moving forward a little bit, they were all kind of still stuck, on, okay, what is that next step? So really hopeful that today's framework actually expanded their mind. I think that discussion, that in-person discussion, is irreplaceable in some degree in those conversations, and being able to talk to your peers and have the conversation about it.
Yeah. Brilliant stuff. Claire, listen, thank you very much for your time. It was a brilliant peer learning seminar. More to come on that. But for now, Claire, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Take care.